All right, everybody. We're going to go over the start of Unit 4, which is Powerful Openings, the art of seduction, of film's opening scene. Okay, and I want you to start with this. Imagine yourself in a movie theater or on your own couch, waiting for a movie you have never seen to start. What do you expect should happen in the first 3 to 5 minutes of the film? Why do you have these expectations? And how often does the beginning of a film really hook you? What are movies that you can think of that have interesting beginnings? So this is located in your assignment. Okay, if you have not downloaded it and opened it to work on it, go ahead and do so at this moment. Okay, and take a few minutes to respond to this. Go ahead and pause the video, and when you're ready, resume it. Okay, so things that should happen in the first 3 to 5 minutes. We usually have an establishment of setting, an establishment of characters, maybe a glimpse into what the plot is going to be about, some of the complications or the problems. Um, And we have these expectations because in the introductions to things, this is what we usually see, right? We see this in novels, in stories, in video games, in comic books, whatever the media is that we're looking at. As long as it involves a story, these are common things that usually happen. Okay, um, and how often does the beginning of a film really hook you? Well, I would venture to say not too often, right? Most of them establish these things in the beginning, but it takes a special film and director to really captivate an audience and leave them on the edge of their seats with just the introduction, right? And it's the same with novels. Um, what are movies that you can think of that have interesting beginnings? Well, one that I can think of off the top of my head is The Dark Knight from the Nolan Batman trilogy. That's a good one. The Lion King has an iconic introduction with the song. Um, the Matrix would be one. Children of Men, which we're going to look at, has an interesting one as well. So there are some movies, maybe Endgame, that are something that's a little bit more recent, right? Or Infinity War. They hook you, right? And you want to see what happens next. Now, in order to have this discussion that we're going to have about movies, we need some key vocabulary. Okay, we're going to look at the introduction to movies um, in an effort to get to novels, right? Um, you're going to see how writers and by extension directors use pivotal words and phrases, use telling details and technique to get their point across and hook an audience. Okay. But in order to have that discussion as far as technique for directors, we're gonna go over some key terms. Okay, we have framing, long shot, close up, or a close shot. Okay, here's the long shot. You notice that that we see a lot of the background. And a long shot has the main focus within frame. You have the entire body. You can see the entirety of it. But most importantly, you can see the background as well. Okay, and so this is often used to establish setting. Okay. In general, this is what we're talking about, right? Framing. This is how the object is positioned within the shot. How much of the frame of the movie the key object will occupy. So we have the long shot, and then we have the close shot. Close-up, we're all familiar. This is one of the most iconic close-ups in movie history, right? This is taken from The Shining when Jack breaks through the door. He's chasing his wife, right? And he says, "Here's Johnny." This is a close-up. The framing of the photo encapsulates just his face, and even part of it is cut off, right? So something I think we're all familiar with. Then we have angles, okay, where the camera will be placed in relation to the subject. We are going to look at a low angle, when the camera is below the subject, used to emphasize dominance and power. A high angle when the camera is above the subject, used to emphasize weakness. And then a Dutch angle when the camera is tilted slightly, producing a sideways image within the frame. This is the low angle camera shot. Okay, we see this a lot of times with superhero movies. The angle of the camera is low, right? The camera is placed below them, so it gives the heroes the appearance of dominance or power. Okay, as you see here with Batman, um, as well as over here with Brad Pitt, the camera is at a low angle, and so it makes the audience feel like they are maybe on the ground or just below. And so these people here in the frame are the ones that have dominance or power, right? Because they are above. The high angle camera shot is the complete opposite, right? You see here on the left from, I think, Avengers, um, we have Thor and Captain America looking up at a threat. And so this conveys to the audience that weakness, right? They are not in a situation of power right now. They are not the ones in control of the situation. And you can tell that by the camera angle, and also, of course, the expressions on their face. We see that as well over here in this still from The Princess Bride. Okay, he's hanging off the side of a cliff. He is not the person in power right now. So this high angle camera shot conveys that. Then we have the Dutch camera angle, and you see here on this left one from Star Trek that the camera is tilted slightly, about 15 degrees. Okay, um, and when this is done, it often conveys a feeling of confusion, right? Our character here is confused, is dismayed, maybe a little bit discombobulated, right? Something has thrown them off, and the fact that the camera angle isn't straight, conveys that to the audience, even if we don't directly think it, right? Then we have lighting. We have low key lighting, and this is when a small source of lighting is used, characterized by the presence of prominent shadows. This is used to show suspicion, mystery, and danger. It suggests that the characters are evil or hiding something. And you see that here on the picture on the right. The high key lighting, we have an even light source and very few shadows, as in an office building. This often suggests honesty, right? They have nothing to hide or there's a lack of threat. Some more examples. When we have low key lighting, you notice that there's a lot of shadows on the picture on the right. It's covering half of her face. On the picture on the left, this gloomy, you have a lot of shadows on his face as well. Um, Oftentimes this conveys to us that feeling of untrustworthiness, right? um, Goes back to our nature, we don't trust what we can't see. That's why a lot of people don't like being in the dark, so that conveys it to us, right? Conversely, we have high key lighting and we have even lighting. A real prime example of this is here, right, from this character in all white, right? Even if you've never seen this movie, you can tell like this character is probably trustworthy. Um, he's somebody who can, like, you see it and we think of like a heavenly figure of angels of purity. That's what the white conveys. Okay, and so we get this feeling of honesty. Same thing with the picture on the right. Then we look at editing. We're going to look at fade, dissolve, crosscut, and flashback and flash forward. Fade is when the image on the screen slowly fades away and makes a connection between two objects or characters. Okay? Notice how it doesn't just fade to black, it fades from one character to the other. This shows an obvious connection there. The dissolve is similar to the fade, except that the blackness isn't there, right? One image fades out as another image fades in. And so the two images briefly occupy the screen at the same time, as you see here. the crosscut. This is also known as parallel editing. The director cuts between two different episodes and builds suspense. So you see, it goes from him to him. There's no dissolve, right? There's no fade. It's just a sudden movement. And if you do that often, then you can build suspense with it. And then, of course, flashbacks. Flashbacks, I think we're all familiar with. Flashbacks or flash forwards gives the viewer important information about what has happened in the past or may happen in the future, right? As this poor dog is seeing right now. Okay. These are the techniques that you are going to use. You're going to be watching opening scenes from various movies, and the purpose of this is to introduce you to how directors and later novelists use telling details, pivotal words and phrases, and technique to introduce their audience to the world they have created in their film or novels. Refer to your notes on film terminology to properly answer the questions, and as always, write in complete sentences. Okay? Just like before in Unit 3, where you were looking at the technique that the writers used in ethos, pathos, and logos, here you're looking at the technique that the directors use. So you have to look at your notes and look at the scene and pick out those key moments, right? Like in this scene, the director uses a long shot to establish the setting. In this part, the director uses low-key lighting to show that this person is untrustworthy. Okay? We are going to... Whoops, sorry about that. Okay, so after each clip, write a response to the following questions. What do you know about the world, the setting that the film is presenting? What about the time period, the location, the time of day or date? How similar or different is it to where and when you live? So some of these you might not get from the scene, right? You'll be able to answer a lot of these. But if you notice that you can't figure out one of them, then it's not a big deal, okay? You can leave it out as long as you answer the majority of it. What do you know or suspect you know about the people, the character in this film so far? What questions do you have about them? Okay. What film techniques, lighting, camera movement, or framing does the filmmaker use to create the world and or establish the characters in this film? So this is where you're going to use your notes, the film techniques. Okay, does he use low-key lighting, high-key lighting? Does he use cross-cuts or fades? So again, make sure you refer to it. And then lastly, make an inference about what will happen later in this film based only on what is presented in the film's opening. What details or keywords and phrases from the opening help you draw this inference? If you have already seen this movie, then just pretend you haven't. Okay, look at those first, 3 to 5 minutes, and put yourself in the place of somebody who has not seen it. What would somebody guess that this movie is about based on that information? Okay, and if you have not seen the movie, then great. Then you just make an inference based on what you saw, based only on those introductory minutes. We are going to look at Children of Men, Lion King, Baby Driver, and oh my god, I blanked out. Something about The Rear Window. Okay.
The world was stunned today by the death of Diego Ricardo, the youngest person on the planet. Baby Diego was stabbed outside a bar in Buenos Aires after refusing to sign an autograph.
Witnesses at the scene say that Diego spat in the face of a fan who asked for an autograph. He was killed in the ensuing brawl. The fan was later beaten to death by the angry crowd. Born in 2009, the son of Marcelo and Silvia Ricardo, a working-class couple from Mendoza, he struggled all his life with the celebrity status thrust upon him as the world's youngest person.
Diego Ricardo, the youngest person on the planet, was 18 years, 4 months, 20 days, 16 hours, and 8 minutes old.
Okay, so you should have just seen the opening scene for Children of Men. All right. If you didn't pick up a lot of stuff, go back and rewatch it. There's a lot of stuff packed into a relatively short amount of time. Okay. Here's your assignment. You should have done the opening writing prompt, and the film terminology is included in here, so you can refer back to it. Okay. And so after watching the clip, we are going to answer these questions. Okay, so what do we know about the world, the setting that the film is presenting? Well, one, this is slightly in the future, right? Um, it's a world that is similar to ours, but there are some key differences. Okay, and hopefully you picked it up. Right. So, what do you know about the world, the setting that the film is presenting? What about the time period? Well, the setting is London, right? In 2027. Time of day, seems like it's the morning, right? And we know this because our protagonist goes and gets coffee. Okay. How similar or different is it to where and when you live? Well, so now this is where we have to really unpack the details that are going on. If you haven't gone back and watched it a second time, I highly recommend that you do. Um, we start off with a news bulletin, okay, and it says that the youngest human in the world is 18 years old, right? So the world is different to our own because the youngest person in the world is 18 years old. So what does that mean? That means that there are, there are no babies being born, right? 18 years ago, the human race stopped having babies. Okay, so that should set off some alarms, right? This world is not the same as ours. We hear news about a siege in Seattle, right? So, a siege is when somebody takes over a particular place or is trying to take over a place. So that implies war. Um, Baby Diego has been killed, right? There is a huge explosion during London. So we get this picture of a very troubled, rough time in this timeline. Okay, so the world is different to our own because no children are being born. You know what? No children have been born in 18 years. The world seems to be at war. And and maybe we can just keep it there. And the world seems to be at war. Okay, what do you know or suspect you know about the people, the characters of the film so far? Well, we don't know too much about our character. His really only line of dialogue is that he wants some coffee. But we do know that the protagonist doesn't care about the news, right? He, or the celebrity status of baby Diego. Right? He just wants to get his coffee. He seems indifferent. And also guess that he has a bit of a drinking problem because this is the morning. He's getting some coffee, and right before the explosion, um, he is pouring some sort of alcohol into his coffee. Right? Not something that most people do in the morning. Okay, what film techniques, lighting, camera movement, or framing does the filmmaker use to help create the world and or establish the characters in the film? Okay, um, so one of them, I think, is that the filmmaker uses a long shot at the end to show the devastation of the bomb explosion. Okay, and it's a quick shot, but we see the woman holding an arm, maybe her own arm, maybe somebody else's, but it's an impactful image, right? And then we get a quick cut to the title, "Children of Men." So those are some that are created, and I want you to add a couple there. And I'm going to ask you to make your own inference here. Okay, and that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to look through these films, watch or these clips, excuse me, look through these clips. Tell me about the setting. Tell me what you know, what film techniques are being used, and then make an inference. You have 3 more, okay? And I want you to do them in the order that I am giving you, okay? Um, so the next one is going to be Rear Window. All of these are included in your Google Drive, so you don't have to worry about YouTube or any restrictions that your Chromebook might give you. And then The Lion King, even though it's animated, it still applies to film technique. And then lastly, Baby Driver. Okay. At the end, you have some discussion questions, okay, to answer. So make sure you answer them as well. Okay. If you have any questions, go ahead and let me know, and I will answer them. Send me a message on Remind or email me, and enjoy the clips.